All right, hi everybody. Welcome to this week's Friday Fast 15. I'm here today with Holly Petersen, and we're talking about Microsoft Teams. As we all know, everybody has been working remotely these days, and so a lot of organizations are looking to the various tools that they have at their disposal to enable a remote workforce. So we have Holly with us here today to talk a little bit more about Teams. First off, Holly, what are some misconceptions that you think a lot of people might have about Teams that you think prevent organizations from taking full advantage of the platform?
I think the number one thing that I hear from people is that Teams is just for chatting. Because Teams replaced Skype for Business, a lot of people kind of frame what they think about Teams as to what they did in Skype for Business. And a majority of people use Skype for Business for chatting. But Teams is actually a brand new tool. It does way more kind of expansive stuff into teamwork. So it does everything related to teamwork. So chat, meetings, things like that. It also has this kind of brand new collaboration kind of tool set that allows groups of people, whether they have a common project, purpose, or goal, to work together, having conversations, working on files together, and all sorts of other tools that they would want to integrate and create kind of a one-stop shop for their team. And in fact, I've seen it really make this moment in time a lot more manageable for a lot of our customers. I've had multiple customers tell me, as we're working on projects for deploying teams together, they were like, I can't imagine this moment without this tool. Like, how would we have gotten this done? And I've seen a lot of teams be more seamless and successful in transitioning to remote work using a tool like Teams.
Great. So you mentioned collaboration and file sharing. So what would you say is the benefit to using Teams over some of the other tools available like Google Docs or Box or Dropbox or things like that?
So I think that there's kind of two factors to that question that kind of like are equally important. So the first one is you already own it if you own Microsoft 365. So if you've bought into Office 365, Microsoft 365, you own Teams. There's no additional cost to using Teams. The second one would be around security and privacy. So one of the things I hear a lot from people is, hey, we have people using Google Docs or Google or Dropbox or Google Drive in our organization. How do we get them to use Teams? So I usually say Teams actually has a lot of the tool set and feature set that you were looking for when you sought out a tool like Google Drive or Dropbox. So don't think of it as like a trade-off, from usability. So I would say there's kind of like two major factors, and I would say I would put them as equal importance. So one, you already own it. There's no additional licensing costs. If you own Microsoft 365 or bought into Office 365 early on, you already own Teams. So you don't have to spend any additional money making that a part of your Office 365 license. The other piece is that it's fully integrated with your Office 365 suite. So if you want to use Word, Excel, those things instead of using Google Docs or Google Sheets to do things like co-author documents together. Again, people go and gravitate towards Dropbox or Google Drive and Google Docs to get the features and the enablement that we already have as part of your license tools in Office 365. So people don't need to go and be sort of driven into the arms of a third-party tool. We have that for them here. So make sure that you're advertising it as such. The other things that I really like about Teams is, again, similar feature set. Again, why people go to Dropbox or Google Drive. You can access it anywhere from any device. Teams lets you do that. I love using the Teams mobile app, so there's all sorts of user enablement. Meanwhile, it's secured the way you secure your Office 365 tenant or your Microsoft 365 tenant. So if you have a password policy protecting your company data, it's inherited by Teams. If you use multi-factor authentication, you're going to have to use multi-factor authentication to get into Teams. The third-party tools, they kind of sit out there apart from whatever you're securing in Microsoft 365. So you want to be, make sure that people know you can do everything you can do with those tools. Plus, it's secured. It's keeping our company data safe, and you are more than welcome to use the mobile app or access from the web.
So it's like there's kind of a balance between ease of use, but also keeping it secure, keeping it, so that not just any random person can stumble upon that content, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, oftentimes we focus so much on locking down our environment that again, we kind of drive people into those tools. But the best part about Microsoft 365 and using Teams is you kind of get the best of both worlds. Like we make it safe for people to use the way that they want to use it. They can work the way that they need to work, but it's secured using our policies. And at the end of the day, that data is ours. It's our company's data. It's not sitting out somewhere in some other third-party cloud tool that we don't have access to. It's great. So you get kind of, yeah, best of both worlds.
Wonderful. That's great. Um, so the question I had, emails and meetings take up so much of my time during the day, and I'm sure others are experiencing the same thing. Um, might Teams be this solution to helping cut down on that time spent, trying to stay on top of emails or staying out of meetings and things like that? Is this a solution?
So I oftentimes get asked in trainings, like, when would I use Outlook versus when would I use Teams? In fact, I have a customer that wants a training solely about that topic. And I've had to think a lot about those use cases. One thing I tell people a lot is that your muscle and habit for using Outlook is very strong. We before Teams, all we had was Outlook. So we try and make it do all sorts of unnatural things that it just wasn't designed to do. So think of a situation where you might be putting, 5 people into the to line of an email, and the email itself is a question, and you're thinking that these 5 people, 10 people, 17 people, a whole department are going to be responding, hitting reply all. These things quickly become these unwieldy things. It's whenever we try to use Outlook to have a real-time conversation, that's when the headaches start. And recently, again, pre-Teams deployment, I was recently on a customer email a chain that was 45 messages long. There were more than 10 participants, and I just needed a map and compass to like make my way through this thing. And pretty soon we're having a meeting to talk about what's going, to try and make sense of what we're discussing in the email. So this is where Teams can be really helpful. When we want to have a real-time conversation with people, and a linear conversation that's easy to follow, we can do that in a chat, and we can also do it in a Teams conversation. So there's kind of two different type of, vehicles of this conversation. And I find that what Teams does is it allows us to have those conversations with the kind of the stripped out clunkiness of email. So we can respond at the same time as one another without getting our, wires crossed. I think we've all heard people talk, whenever we talk about we're getting our wires crossed, I'm pretty sure that there's a reply all chain to blame for that phrase. So
Yeah.
that's really what I think it's all about, is we can engage in problem solving in real time using chat and Teams conversations. Outlook is bad at it. It wasn't designed to do it. And now Microsoft has given us a tool that does it way better.
That makes so much sense. So like, rather than having to then stop and have a meeting about the email that got out of hand, that meeting is unnecessary.
Right,
You're all
right.
on the same page, right away in real time.
Yeah.
But let's talk about hosting meetings in Teams for a minute. So that's possible, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, so Teams, again, another kind of beauty part of Teams, the good part, is that Teams and Outlook, although they kind of are opposing forces, right, for communication, they really do integrate and talk with one another. So your Outlook calendar has an integration into creating Teams meetings. So you could create and host a Teams meeting right from Outlook. So you don't have to learn any new tricks. Like if you can make a meeting in Outlook, you can make a Teams meeting in Outlook. And in Teams, on the other side, you can actually see everything that's on your Outlook calendar in Teams, but your Teams calendar is really focused on what Teams meetings do you have, and you can join them as we are right now. You sent me an Outlook invite. We joined this meeting in Teams, and it works really, really well. I think of Teams meetings and calls are that moment where, hey, this is easier than typing a conversation when we need to get together. We can have these meetings. And frankly, I've seen, again, the current environment that we are in, where many, many people are working remote, Teams meetings are that lifeline of being able to hear other people's voices and interact with your coworkers, who I'm sure a lot of people miss. That I just think it's, we're all having a lot of fun doing Teams meetings. And in fact, we're all experimenting with now the new custom backgrounds feature, and all sorts of fun stuff. So Teams meetings are not only, technically adept and ready for you, but they're fun. So it's definitely still a tool that you're going to want to use.
Yeah. Are there any other tips that you have for using Teams to enable a remote workforce?
Be ready to coach each other out of old habits. I said, and I've said it, I'll always say it. Your Outlook muscle is so strong. I even catch myself opening up a new email and start filling it out and realizing, oh my gosh, I'm trying to kick off a reply all tornado, and I should take that over into Teams and not do this via Outlook. That's probably when I still catch myself doing it, and I train people to use Teams. It's because our Outlook habits are pretty deep. So coach yourself, coach others. A good rule of thumb, for those that are committed to using Teams, try and watch how many reply all cycles you're getting through. If an email chain goes on longer than 3 reply alls, be the change you want to see in the world. Say time out. Let's try and take this up in a chat in Teams. Oftentimes you're going to arrive at whatever answer or solve the problem you're trying to solve much faster via chat or a Teams conversation. And then last, Teams, like any tool that's part of Microsoft 365, changes pretty regularly. There's new features being added all the time, stuff that people are really hungry for. So make sure in your organization that people have an awareness of what's changing and when, so that you can communicate those changes to one another. Some of us will figure out on our own that certain things are there, but for things that people have been really wanting, like the custom backgrounds in Teams meetings, like be the person who gets to give the good news to your organization. And also make sure that you have training available, support help available. Oftentimes, when we're deploying Teams or rolling out Teams, it's new for everyone in the company, including IT support. So make sure that your IT support team gets the attention they need, that they have the knowledge that they need to support everyone. So kind of let them be a little ahead of the curve. That can really make a difference and make sure that everyone in your organization is ready to adopt and use Teams.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like, all these features sound so great, and it's really just, it comes down to a shift in workflow, right? It's a slight change in an individual's workflow, how they get things done throughout the day,
Right.
which is the biggest challenge. But everything else on paper sounds like, you can get a lot done using Teams. So, I mean, Cross uses the workflow company. So
Yeah.
hopefully, we have a few people on the staff here that can talk a little bit about that too. So, yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Holly. This has been so great. I'm sure there's a lot of people that will have a lot more questions about this and how they can better leverage Teams within their organization. So, for everybody watching, if that's you, don't hesitate to reach out. You can always get us at letstalk@crossuse.com. And make sure to follow us for next week's Friday Fast 15.
All
Thanks
right.
all.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. Bye.